Sounds good.
Hey, what's up, team? So this is part 3 or episode 3 of the Coach's Corner. So we're going to be answering, well, hopefully we'll get through 5 questions like we did the last previous weeks, but we'll see where it takes us. And yeah, we'll go from there. All right, Al, what's on Al? Have I ever called you Al? Right, Al, what's on agenda for tonight?
On the agenda, Brenda, we've got 5 questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, just trying to pick one that will be good for kicking off. Something a little bit easy to ease us into it. But none of these are easy. But one from Beth.
Okay.
Basically, she wants to know how to improve thoracic spine mobility in overhead squats and snatch.
All right. I mean, thoracic mobility, I think, comes down to like having a bit of space between the shoulder blades, but also allowing the thoracic spine to actually be able to rotate as well as flex and extend. And so I think I would kind of attack that in a couple of different ways, because it obviously with mobility, you're looking at trying to mobilize the upper back, but also the shoulders so that you can kind of get into that nice tight overhead position. But at the same time, if you're creating a lot of mobility that you might have never had before, you might actually lose a lot of stability that you could potentially have had previously. So usually the way that I'll address it is, working through rotation, working through flexion and extension, whether it be through like getting a trigger point ball and digging that in through your traps and your lats to hopefully loosen off the shoulder blades so you can get a bit more space, rotating as well as flexing and extending. But in the same respect, I'll also do some kind of static or dynamic stretching. So we're talking like banded distraction. So having a band come down from, say, a pull-up bar, popping your elbow inside and just kind of manipulating that stretch through your lats here. The other one that I really like as well is kind of putting your hand inside the band, applying a bit of pressure, and then just letting the band kind of pull you towards kind of the point of insertion, just so you can get a really nice stretch through the shoulder, through the lats, up into the traps. But that only kind of solves one issue. If you're looking at overhead squatting, just doing mobility exercises is not going to get you better at overhead squats if that's the goal. So what you need to keep in mind is that the outcome is the most important part in that. And what I mean by that is, if you want to learn how to overhead squat and get more stable and get more mobile in the overhead squat, you have to use that as a marker. You can't just go, oh, well, my flexion and extension has improved, but my overhead squat still sucks. Well, then maybe you need to use your overhead squat as like a test and actually use that to improve your mobility and improve your strength. And that kind of comes down to, it's specific. Like a gymnast might be able to do the splits, but they might not be able to do, something that a weightlifter might be able to do, because they're very specific within their fields. And I'm not saying that go on.
Just to add on to, you mentioned about kind of being specific. I think a lot of people with stretching, it's like, oh, I want to improve, my hip flexibility or my, shoulder flexibility, whatever it is. And they're always looking for like one exercise which is going to carry it, or one exercise which is going to help. And honestly, like, first and foremost, if you want to get more flexible within a given position, you've got to practice that position. So, spending time doing snatches, spending time in an overhead squat, even like, what's that challenge that's been going around where you like sit in a squat for 5 minutes? As cute as it is, but it's like,
I've seen that. No, it's effectively simple.
Yes, I think like that's not to say that stretches are not useful. They completely are, but there's something that you have to do in addition to kind of core movements, which is going to be like kind of maintaining those positions.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you can feed them into other exercises as well. Like, for example, if you're trying to improve your front rack mobility, for the clean, doing like front squats with straps to like really kind of force you to keep those elbows up and, to apply pressure is going to help. Sitting in a front squat for 5 minutes is probably going to help as well. But try and keep them kind of, the stretches that you do, keep them as specific to the movement that you're doing before coming away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I wanted to kind of elaborate on that point.
Yeah, and I think some people can get some benefit to just practicing that movement. So for example, if you want to work on your squat, sometimes the best course of action is to actually, practice the squat and actually practice it and slow it down and hold certain positions. And actually you kind of touched on it, and to elaborate on that is, if you're holding a squat and it looks like absolute dog crap and your back is rounded, and your heels are off the ground, then you kind of need to evaluate, and you need to be like, well, is this actually achieving what I want it to achieve? Like, no, it's not, because that's not an optimal squat for you. What we're looking for is, if you can hold a squat, even if it is slightly above parallel for, say, a couple of sessions a week, and then, it might get better, but the whole idea is that the feet are flat, the knees are out over the toes, the chest is up, the back is nice and straight, the core is on, or the core is tight. And so you're not trying to like force a range that you don't currently have. And you have to kind of like come to terms with the fact that, it will get better over time, but it's not something that you can just force, and it's not going to happen like that. It's the same as learning a snatch and learning a clean and jerk. You don't just wake up one day and then it happens. It might feel like that's the case, but that's not the case at all. You might have done 300, 400, 500 reps before it even clicks. And you've just thought that one moment in time is, oh my God, it works so well. But actually those whole 300, 400 reps have been a learning process for your brain and the mind-muscle connection for you to actually learn how to do that movement correctly and efficiently in the way that your body wants to move, I guess.
Yeah, I think kind of just to add as well, obviously there's some degree of, the weightlifting positions that you will hit as an individual are going to be personal to you, to the way you're built, the way you're put together, your flexibility, everything. So I think it's like, if you want to improve flexibility in a certain area, you've got to understand, like, what is the correct position anyway? Because there's no point improving flexibility in an incorrect position. Say, for example, like, in an overhead squat, like if you're holding the bar out in front of you when it should be a little bit further behind, and all you're trying to focus on is, the flexibility and keeping that out in front, it's, you're working towards the wrong goal. So I think you got to make sure that, like, do these positions work for me? So, is the grip width that I'm using correct? Could it be wider? Could it be narrower? Even like squatting, like one of the first things is like, is the foot position. If somebody's got like, because it's to do with how their hips are put together. If somebody's squatting with a narrow stance when they're more suited to a wider stance, then something has to change in order to accommodate that. And usually, again, it
absolutely,
yeah. So yeah, I think just like kind of experimenting with that and trying to find out what works for you first, and then what areas can be improved, what areas do I actually need to work on flexibility in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as a takeaway though, just so people can take it away, I think if it's the overhead squat or the thoracic mobility that you are looking to improve, first of all, you need to identify an outcome. So how am I going to measure week 1 to week 6, for example? So have I gotten better is what you're looking at doing. The only way you're going to know that is if you have a marker to measure over those 6 weeks. The next thing is to address whether you need to either do the movement like we've just said. So if it's an overhead squat, we need to practice the overhead squat. And then the second thing is, if the overhead squat is going well, but you're still struggling to get in those positions because of your thoracic spine, then we need to look at addressing certain areas, whether it be opening up space in the upper back through the shoulder blades, through foam rolling, through soft tissue work, through stretching, mobility, whatever it might be. And I think that's kind of the 2 takeaways that you can get from just improving specifically for that kind of area. That's kind of the takeaway that I would send out to people.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Next question.
Yeah.
got one from Mark. He wants to know our favourite cues when handling at a comp.
Go first.
We were discussing this one earlier because it's just a very much an it depends question.
Yeah.
Again, like there's going to be, I think it's not so much a favorite cue, just one cue that you use for people, because everybody's going to have like different issues when they're in competition. So it's kind of like your favorite cue has got to be the cue that works best for that person at that moment in time.
Yeah.
So it's more a case of just like, you have like an athlete, somebody that you're looking after. But cues, generally, you want to establish that with the athlete beforehand so that they
Absolutely.
know exactly what you mean. Whether it's like staying over the bar a little bit, like, I know, like general stuff, stay over the bar, use your legs, that kind of thing. But that can mean different things for different people.
Yeah.
And I think like trying to establish, like, if you want a strong lockout, for example, having that pre-established with the athlete so that the cue is more of a reminder rather than a prescription. And then it's just like kind of figuring out, okay, so within this movement, what is it that like we can improve? It's not a training session though. You're just looking for little tweaks. So what's going to give me the most bang for my buck in this warm up before they go out?
Precisely.
So I think, you're just looking at like what's going to elicit kind of the most change within the person, rather than like, just whatever sounds cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be honest, I can't really add much to that, because you basically touched on everything. Is it needs to be specific to the athlete. You also need to make sure that what you're actually saying is addressing what you want it to do in that athlete. So, you kind of touched on a few cues there. And then obviously the third thing is, in competition, you don't want to try and change as much as possible, because you've got to realize that if you change so many things, that could mean a drastic either increase or decrease in performance. And what you really are there to do is just manifest the performance that you have prepared for in training. You're not there to train them. You're there to coach them through a performance. You're not there to make little adjustments, and you're there to just remind them and say to them, like, listen, on that next one, elbows up nice and tall, you've got to get this chest up and reach back. Even something like that, where you're not just saying to them like elbows up, you're actually, and you touched on it perfectly, where you're developing that cue over time. What I say to you, for example, if I say elbows up, might mean something completely different to someone else. But if I then extend that and say, when I say to you elbows up, what I really mean is I want you to really think about pulling these elbows up and back so you get this bar as high as possible before you're then punching yourself underneath.
Whereas for someone else might be just a question of like shoulder rotation, for example. So they want to row back, but actually they should be rowing up a bit more.
Yeah.
Elbows up, same thing, two different ones.
Yeah. And the thing is people will shout out things like big pull, reach tall, finish tall, pull it high. There's so many different things for that just one specific thing that you're looking for. But even within those cues, they can mean so many different things. Like if you're thinking of reaching tall, like you said, it could either be the fact that either the athlete isn't pulling or they're pulling backwards, not up. And obviously, hopefully, the more you work with that lifter and the more you kind of establish that relationship, the more those cues will be effective, because you've been able to actually refine what that means. When you hear someone shout elbows up, it's not just elbows up. It's a reminder that is the one thing that I need you to focus on so you can make this lift as effective as possibly.
It's like, it's so easy to just kind of bombard somebody with like, because you want them to do well, and you're seeing like, this is not, what you're expecting, and this is going wrong. And, sometimes you just want to say, okay, let's just completely relearn the snatch, or just give them like 6 different cues. But again, like, when you're out there, you're under pressure, like you've got a countdown timer staring you in the face. You've got a bunch of judges staring you in the face. You've got like all your friends and family staring you in the face. Like you don't want to think about more than one thing. You don't want to think about anything. So I think it's literally just stick to like one maybe 2 cues, but
Yeah.
only that second cue if they're like separate. Like one is maybe like on the walk up to the platform,
Yep.
you know, just think about being calm, being controlled, that kind of thing. Second one might be during the lift.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely don't give them too much. They've already got enough on their plate as it is.
No, I would completely agree with that. And I think as well, you know, we've kind of focused on those sort of external cues or those performance cues where we're thinking elbows up, blah, blah. Sometimes it might just be a case of like, you know, someone goes out and you just say like, go and make me proud. Like that could be a cue in itself, you know, where if someone is like really nervous and really jittery, you might not want to be shouting all of these things at them. All they need to hear is just, no matter what happens, you make me proud. So go and make this lift and be brave. And then after that, you don't need to say anything because that's your cue.
Yeah.
You know? And even if you've noticed, and this is the thing is, even if you have noticed something has gone wrong in a lift, I would argue that sometimes it's not always appropriate to address that as you usually would say in a training environment. And what I mean by that is they know that they've just missed the lift. So by you just saying, do you know why you missed that? Or however it might be, well, they probably don't, but they also like might not respond to that well.
Yeah.
So all it needs to be a case of is just remind them, you know why they missed that. So you maybe just say to them like, on this next one, exactly the same, but I need you to just be a little bit more aggressive through that pull. Yeah. And that's you know, that could work absolute wonders. And I'm not saying that that's a cue that I would give to everybody, you know, it's specific like we just identified at the start, but it's definitely a starting point, I think. And I think you touched on it really well, is sometimes saying nothing is better than saying something, in all honesty.
I think as well, like being careful about what you say, because sometimes it's like if you say the wrong thing, like that can backfire as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, sometimes saying nothing or just saying very little can be quite useful. I'm just trying to think of like an example. It's more just kind of like sort of factual statements.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you I don't know, you know, you might slap someone on the back and say, you're strong. But then the first thing that goes through their head is like, no, I'm not.
No, I'm not.
It's almost like it's flipped, you know? So just stating the obvious is sometimes not great because like, so, you know, you're just kind of looking for the worst almost, or the athlete is rather.
Yeah.
And obviously stuff like, you know, finish the pull, do this, do that, fine.
Yeah.
Because I'm focusing on actually doing something. But just kind of stating the obvious is sometimes not, it can be.
Yeah, it can be detrimental. I would agree with that. Yeah. Cool.
Right. Having a little look through. We've got one from Cam.
Cameraman.
What are your thoughts on curls for the girls?
Curls for the girls. Well, I mean, big biceps are important in weightlifting. No. I think we can address this in two ways. I'll try and keep this as short as possible. I think specifically in weightlifting, if you look at kind of the anatomy of a weightlifter, or, you know, I guess the anatomy of the weightlifter, by and large, they've got huge legs, and in proportion to their legs, their upper body is lacking, let's say. And I think, like, yes, legs are very important in weightlifting, but you've also got to remember that if you're trying to pull 140 kilos off the floor, it's got to go somewhere, either here or here. And if your upper body isn't strong enough to be able to, well, first of all, pull the bar, because let's be honest, like, although there are some schools of thought where people don't always pull the bar really high, you know, they always think, well, actually the extension all comes from the legs. I think that's a different argument entirely.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I either agree or disagree. All I'm saying is that I think there's a little bit more involvement in the upper body than people actually give credit for.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. If you're not strong enough to hold that weight once you've extended through your legs and you're trying to pull it and get under it, that's a big issue. The second thing is, once it's here, if you've never caught 140 and your arms are like absolute noodles, it's going to snap. You know, your elbows might not snap, but I'm saying that something is going to go wrong.
I've seen elbows snap before. It's not pretty.
I mean, yeah. and I think it's kind of like, it is a very massive overgeneralization that people say, like, weightlifters don't need to bench, weightlifters don't need to do, you know, arms, or they don't need to do X, Y, and Z. And actually, I think this is going to maybe sound controversial, but I think that some weightlifters can get a huge benefit from doing like specific tricep work, specific bicep works, forearm work, you know, shoulder work, chest work, back work, and stuff like that. And I'm not just talking about your rows or your chins. I'm talking about like single arm rows or single arm presses, and, you know, curls and push downs and stuff like that. Like, I think just to target those specific areas. And yeah, I mean, that's obviously, I want you to kind of touch on the other side of that. And I'm just talking like generalized for male and female.
Right, yeah.
For example. Yeah.
I think before I start on the new topic, I just want to take what you've said and just rant about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Therapeutic. No, because you mentioned, like, not at you, but like generally about the point.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you mentioned how I think this is something that I see, like, because I think the British system has taught it for a little while. Whereas, you know, your arms are like ropes, your arms are like chains. You don't really do anything. They're just kind of there. They, you know, just exist. And it's like, no, like, if you're going for 100% attempts, like, you want every advantage you can get.
Absolutely.
So, you know, if you can pull on that bar a little bit harder, i.e., you know, maybe bicep curls will help you be a bit stronger in that, you want to take that.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, fine. Like, you know, but again, the arms don't do anything for not even half the lift. By the time you've got it into the hip and you're, you know, extending, you're pulling on the bar, you might be pulling it up, you're also pulling yourself underneath it. And then it's, as you say, to actually support it, you're going to need like body strength. So I think it's like, and yeah, we do have large legs, because by and large, the legs are the primary mover.
Absolutely.
But, you know, if you don't, you need to be balanced. So if your upper body is out of balance compared to your lower body within the context of weightlifting, it's, you know, it's going to be to your disadvantage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just, you know, curls for the girls, curls for everyone. Like, you know, just get strong. Like, don't leave any area like that's not strong, because it's going to help you in one way or another. Like, yeah. I don't know. I just wanted to have a go, really.
I think, yeah, and actually, I think it's good that you kind of ranted there. I think the last thing that I'll say on that is, obviously, we are, like, although, you know, weightlifting is performed within weight categories, there's nothing saying that you can't go down or up a category. But what we're also saying is that we're not trying to make you as big as possible at the expense of, you know, a lack of mobility. What we're saying is that strength doesn't just have to manifest in the quads, the glutes, the hamstrings, you know, the calves, like the lower half of the body, or even the back. It's also really important, like we said, to have it, you know, in the chest, in the shoulders, in the triceps, in the arms. And like I just said, I'm not expecting someone to have absolutely huge shoulders where they can't even internally and externally rotate properly, because then obviously that's limiting potentially the amount of pull you could get.
Does that really become a problem? Like, obviously, you know, I know probably to a degree the size of your muscles get in the way, but, like, you know, you see guys like, you know, Lasher, for example, like, that's a big guy.
He's a very big guy.
Have any problem sort of getting it overhead? Is it like an individual thing, or is it like more general in that muscle size will get in the way once you get to a certain point?
I don't think it's necessarily muscle size. I think it's just a case of, usually, because obviously you are adding muscle mass to that area.
Yeah.
If it's not done in a productive way, let's say, so if all you're doing is just curls and curls because your coach said you to, you then can't straighten your elbow. Well, that might cause a problem, is what I'm saying. If all you're doing is front raises rather than, you know, shoulder presses and lateral raises, and all you're working is on this anterior deltoid, and now you can't even retract your shoulder blade and pull your shoulder back, then that's kind of what I'm on about. So I'm not just talking about, like, getting massive is not necessarily going to limit your range of motion, but you also have to think, like, I can't imagine, you know, I'm trying to think of a person off the top of my head here. Like, I couldn't imagine Arnie, you know, like reaching behind and scratching the back of his head because
Yeah.
he's absolutely humongous, is what I'm saying. You know, if your bicep is so massive and your shoulder is so massive that you can't even like reach behind your head and do this at the expense of you being huge, then, you know, there's a problem. Lasher's a bit different because,
Can you reach your middle back? Because I used to be able to touch my fingers, but now I can't.
I mean, I can, but it's not the prettiest sight.
Yeah, see, maybe I've done too many curls.
Yeah.
But
But also, like, the thing is, and you made a good example with Lasher, is you've got, like, Lasher has developed that size and that strength, but he's also been doing weightlifting specifically.
yeah,
So he's been able to maintain that size and also that mobility because he's been constantly doing those movements that have been ingrained into his kind of, I guess, movement capacity.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think.
And then the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was obviously, like, curls for the girls is like, you know, you wear vests, sun's out, guns out, whatever, and like, yeah. But I also think, like, and I kind of want to get your opinion on this. Obviously, inherently, guys will generally have a stronger upper body and potentially a stronger lower body in untrained populations. Yeah, I'm not comparing male and female weightlifters. I'm just comparing untrained males, untrained females. Generally, males will have a stronger upper body than females. And I think it's really, really important in females especially to do upper body work, because it's so important, not only for, you know, to be able to actually pull on the bar, but I'm also talking about actually being able to protect the joints where you're holding the bar up, like the shoulder, like the elbow, like the wrist. And if all of that is just a noodle, then you're going to put yourself at risk of, you know, not being able to lift as much as you could just because your upper body is lacking.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it's so overlooked, just because, you know, I don't kind of want to say the word bulky, but I think it's so overlooked in the female population in the respect to, you know, gaining muscle mass in the upper body. But
Yeah.
like, let's be honest, and I'll say this and I'll finish. If you want to be a decent weightlifter, you have to be willing to make a sacrifice to look a specific way.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing is that muscle size, it doesn't come down to physiology. Then it only comes down to your psychology, with the fact that you're feeling like someone is going to judge you. First of all, who cares? If you're snatching 100 kilos and you're a female, that's bloody amazing, even if you're a male.
Yeah, I'll tell you something, like, I've had more people come up and start conversations and, you know, just for a chit chat in the gym because I've been doing weightlifting, versus people come up to me and start conversations because I look good in the gym.
Precisely.
You know? So it's like,
yeah, and the thing is it's weightlifting is not a sport. If you're looking to get into weightlifting just to look good, you're in the wrong sport. If you're looking to get into weightlifting to improve your performance, improve your mobility, improve strength, power, speed, whatever it might be, you're in the right sport. Guess what? If you eat well and you train hard, looking good is a byproduct of the sport.
yeah.
If you look at most, and I'm not saying everybody, if you look at most under 96 kilo male and female lifters, maybe not females, because, you know, generally guys tend to be taller and slightly larger in muscle mass, but they will be like shredded. They will have an amazing physique.
No, for sure. Like,
and although that's not the goal, it's nice as a byproduct. If you train hard and you look good, you look athletic.
yeah.
What's the problem with that?
Works for me.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
So
cool.
Yeah, no, I think just to kind of like touch on your point, because you know, you look at the club, like, for example, like, so just to sort of establish it. So, you know, it's as you say, like, women generally have weaker upper bodies compared to their lower bodies. The reverse is true for men, in that men, compared to their upper bodies, have weaker lower bodies, right? Just
apart from me.
So, you know, and you see this is like one of the kind of like major differences sort of between the sexes. when we coach, when we have fresh new beginners in, women tend to be a lot more leg dominant, whereas guys tend to be a lot more kind of upper body and arm dominant. Yeah, they don't want to use their legs, they just want to rip the thing up. So I think it's like curls for the girls but squats for the guys. So it's like, but again, it's that balance thing. So because you gotta use your legs, you gotta use your arms. So it's more just a case of, again, these are kind of wider reaching differences as a result of, just sexual dimorphism. But you have to look at that sort of within the context of weightlifting. Like, if somebody's just using their arms to get everything up, then that's not the most efficient way of doing it. So they need to do more squats. They need to do, more developing within that area.
Absolutely.
The reverse is true. For somebody who has no problem standing it up, but who struggles to actually hold the weight there and support it overhead. So yeah, I think.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All right. Another question?
Yeah, let's do it. We're doing well so far. I think that's 3.
Nice. We got 2 left. So Zarko, we've got 2 from Zarko.
Go on then.
Pick which one. Was that a sigh?
No, it wasn't a sigh. I said go on then. It might have well have been a sigh.
It sounded like, oh. Got he wants to know what are some, I don't know if we answered this one. What are some qualities of a weightlifting athlete?
I mean, I don't think we've answered it.
We did.
Oh, did we? No, I don't think we did.
No. The trouble is, it's like, because we read these every week and you see the same ones again and again.
Yeah. They're like almost iterations of the question.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we could probably tackle this in terms of physical qualities, and then delve into some more kind of psychological qualities or traits of weightlifters that you would quite commonly want in someone to develop, or that you would see in someone who is a fairly decent weightlifter themselves. I mean, I think physical, obviously strength, obviously power, obviously good core strength, good leg strength, good coordination, balance, like all the I mean, kind of the list could go on. Like, you could even say, even though all you're doing is lifting weights, I still think it's important to have some kind of aerobic capacity. And what I mean by that is, I'm not expecting you to snatch 140 kilos and go and run a bloody marathon, because, you're a weightlifter and you're not a CrossFitter. Yeah. And I'm not saying that CrossFit is bad. All I'm saying is that if you want to be a weightlifter, sometimes there will have to be a sacrifice.
Yeah, you've got to train specifically for.
Precisely, yeah. You're either going to have to lean more towards the strength qualities and less towards the aerobic qualities, vice versa. Yeah. We're a very anaerobic dominant sport, meaning that our lift or I guess the execution of performance is usually between, I would say, a maximum of 10 seconds. You clean the weight, and I'd say actually 10 seconds is probably pushing it. I'd say it's probably anywhere between 1 to 6 seconds at a guess. Yeah. If it's a snatch, it might be a little quicker. If it's a clean and jerk, obviously, because it's 2 movements, it's going to be slightly longer. And that's very anaerobic in nature. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't have some aerobic qualities, meaning that, like I just said, I'm not expecting you to run a marathon, but if you have a slightly better aerobic capacity, you're able to recover between sets. Yeah. You're able to do more volume in a session. You're then able to recover between those sessions. And although I'm not expecting all of the weightlifters to go out and run marathons and get on a bike for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever, it's still important in terms of a health quality to have a heart and lungs that actually function the way that they should function as a human.
As well, you don't even need to necessarily, like, going out for a jog, going out for a swim, that's brilliant and it's going to help. But even just like modifying your training a little bit, so making sure that you're, if you do, you might want to piss about a bit and do every minute on the minute for like minor exercises, or just time your rest in between sets, so that you're kind of working on that anaerobic capacity and not giving yourself 20 minutes to go and have a chat with your mates before you
Yeah,
put it.
precisely.
So there's ways of like integrating it into your training that don't necessarily, that can help you improve in that area, but don't necessarily mess up your training by giving you additional workload or taking time out of your day.
Absolutely. I think as well, kind of the qualities, like the closer it gets to competition, obviously the less, I would say the less fit you're going to be, the more competition specific it will become.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, at the start of a cycle, let's say it's a 16-week cycle or however long you want it to be, even if it's 4 weeks, you're probably most likely, if it's, I'm just going to take a basic program because I'm not going to talk about all the different types of programming you could potentially do. By and large, if you've got more volume, you're trying to generate some kind of fitness quality. The less volume there is and the higher intensity, let's say in the first week you're doing 5 sets of 3, 5 sets of 4, whatever it might be. In the last week, you're probably not going to be doing 5 sets of 4. You're probably going to be doing maybe anywhere between 4 to 8 singles. And already there, you can see that obviously the volume is less, potentially, depending on kind of what you've chosen to do. But also you'll notice that because you're not working within like 4 repetitions, you're only doing 1. You're going to rest for longer. Your sessions might take us slightly longer. You're focusing on slightly more specific qualities that are needed for competition, i.e. anaerobic qualities. Yeah, and I think you said it really well, actually, with the fact that it's not necessarily needed that you get on a bike and go and cycle for 30 minutes, you know, and stuff like that. I mean, you could obviously give examples of stuff like even doing things like wrestling, for example, for 10, 15 minutes, or like just some kind of floor or mat work, like your core work or whatever. That's still training some kind of aerobic capacity, just in a slightly different way. I'm not talking doing AMRAPs of burpees and stuff like that, especially not as a weightlifter. You know, as a CrossFitter, it's very different because they need they need all of those qualities to be successful.
Yeah.
You know, they might periodize their training where they focus on weightlifting for 6 weeks, then gymnastics for 6 weeks, or they might have a period where they work on all of them. And then every 4 weeks, the emphasis is placed on one thing at a time. Yeah. So rather than them just focus, anyway, I'm getting off topic and I'm just kind of ranting, but
right. But I think is like you kind of touched on it. It's almost like I'm reminded of, you know, like your old kind of RPG games where you have like a lot of different categories. You know, you've got like wisdom and constitution and strength, and you've only got so many points to spend.
It would all be strength, all of it.
Listen, you want to max out that strength bar.
Max out strength and health. That's it. It's the only thing that matters in RPGs.
Yeah, so it's like, no, but it's true. You've only got so many points to spend, so how do you spend it? Well, like if you put it all in one, it's not always the best thing. So you want to have something that you kind of work towards, and that's your like kind of primary strength, but you don't want to neglect the other areas as well, generally. So yeah, but you know, and so it's going to be dependent on like which class you play or which sport you play.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then if we touch on the psychological traits, I think in all honesty, you could have all of the physical traits in the world. You could be an absolute thoroughbred of a weightlifter, but if your mind is so weak that you go and attempt PBs and you miss them all the time because, you know, you're either scared or, you know, you get in your own head and like you start to change things as the weight gets heavier, it doesn't matter how thoroughbred you are. If you don't fix what's between your ears, then nothing is going to manifest itself. And I think obviously there's a lot of psychological qualities that we could kind of go into, but I think for me, the 2 biggest qualities that you could have on your side as a weightlifter is confidence or like self-belief. Yeah. And just that mental ability to work hard at something, even when it's not going your way. And I'm not talking about mental toughness or resilience or grit, because those are all kind of like nice words to throw out when someone thinks that they're working hard. All I'm talking about is knowing that even though sometimes training sucks and, you know, things go badly, you're still showing up every single day and you're putting the work in regardless of, you know, what you've done before or how that session went, or, you know, what you're going to go and do after, what else is going on in your life. And I think if you can handle those well, I think the physical traits can be slightly better trained. Yeah, that's all I'd say, I think.
No, fair. I think as well, like, you know, your physical training will improve, you know, your kind of like mental abilities and your abilities to handle things. Improving, you know, your kind of like your mental strength will improve your physical strength as well.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a feedback loop.
Yeah.
You know, if you're, you know, say for example, like you struggle with discipline, because I know that I did like years ago, and
Yeah.
so like, everything was a bit more irregular, that kind of thing, but you know, eventually you start working on it. So you know, you're kind of working on your discipline. This is a mental thing that you're trying to work on. So you're trying to turn up on time, you're being more regular, you're, you know, putting things in within time slots, and all those things are going to improve your performance physically.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you're going to be more rounded, you're going to, you know, be getting the work done that you need to get done, that kind of thing. And you know, again, it kind of reinforces itself too.
Yeah.
So you know, I think it's just like bearing that in mind. You know, it's like strong mind, strong body, and vice versa. So you, it's as you say, it's like, you know, you can be a thoroughbred physically.
Yeah.
And if your mental game is not there, you know, it's useless.
It is, yeah, exactly. I would agree. Yeah, I think so. Like, yeah, I mean, you kind of summarized it there, I think, to be honest.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think, yeah, just kind of like bounce off what you've said. So yeah, you know, kind of like drive, grit, whatever it is, you know, just fucking turn up on time and just keep turning up on time.
Yeah.
Like, there's not, you know, just put the work in. And this isn't something that you achieve in a day. This is like,
absolutely.
It's a case of just chipping away at it over months, years, like, you know, so just turn up, just be there, just do
absolutely.
the work. Like,
and the longer you turn up, the better you'll get.
Yeah, this is yeah, I think so. But obviously there's going to be days that are going to be good, and there's going to be days that are going to be not so good, and there's going to be days where there's nothing else going on in your life, and there's going to be days where you know, everything's going on. And so it's like trying to find ways around that. Like, how important is training to you? What are you willing to push aside, to reschedule, to sacrifice in order to get done what you need to get done?
Yeah.
So I think it's just like, yeah, again, just turning up on time and just wanting to turn up on time.
Just turn up. Yeah.
And then, you know, you mentioned like confidence as well. Like, I think when you said self-belief, I think is the more sort of correct thing, because I think, you know, you don't want to be underconfident, and you definitely don't want to be overconfident.
Yeah.
Because like, underconfident,
plenty of those people.
Yeah. Underconfident, you're never going to achieve as much as you could possibly achieve, because you're never going to try it, or you're going to panic or freak out. Overconfident, you know, you're never going to achieve as much as you're going to achieve, because you're going to end up with a barbell on your head. So you know, there's a range in that kind of middle, and that's where you want to be aiming at. You know, like, know that thyself. Like, what can you do? What are you capable of doing? What should you be able to hit? And just, you know, just being honest with yourself, and, you know, honest with your coach, and honest with like everyone sort of around you, your teammates. But yeah, that takes time, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely not something that you just pick up like that. It's, you know, I think, like you said, it's developed in a relationship with your coach and your teammates and your club, and even just in yourself. I think the last thing as well that I'd say, which you kind of jogged my memory on, and it's just gone like completely out of my head. I like, as you were talking, I thought about it, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely, you know, something that's really important. And then as soon as you stopped talking, it just went out of my head again. So then I'm just thinking, well, actually, it's probably not that important. So
one of those things where you're going to message me afterwards, and like, fuck, why didn't I talk about this?
Yeah. I was like, damn it.
Was it a mental quality? Was it like something athletes should do? No idea. We'll see if we can remember it.
Yeah.
Save it for the next
I
episode.
might shout it out at the end.
Yeah, just interrupt me if it comes back.
Yeah, I will.
All right. Do we want to add anything more to that, or are we good?
I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, I think the last thing that I'd say is, I think the thing is, I don't know if this is trainable. I think it's more just a case of the more you kind of do things, the more you're kind of involved in the sport, the less worried you become about others. And I think kind of the way that I'm going at that is, it's good to be competitive, but what you have to understand is that if the only reason you're in the sport is to beat other people, you're not going to get very far.
No.
And I know that people would argue with me and say, well, actually, that's not true because I'm trying to beat this person to get to a medal. What I'm trying to say is that is not the outcome. The outcome is you want to get a gold medal at the Olympics. That's the outcome. The outcome is not, I want to beat Lasha Talakadze.
Yeah.
The outcome is, I want to get a gold medal. I can't even speak. I want to get a gold medal at the Olympics. That's the outcome. And I think what's more important is focusing on the process and competing against yourself. Maybe even competing against what your coach has told you, where they say, they say something to you and you're like, I'm going to prove him wrong. Good. That's exactly what you want. You want that competitive fire in yourself, but you just don't want to kind of outwardly project it to other people, saying, I need to beat him, I need to beat her, I need to be lifting these numbers. Like, no, you'll get there, but you've got to beat yourself there. It
should be like the competitive, wanting to beat somebody or wanting to beat this record, or that should be a means to an end, and not the end in itself.
Yeah.
And also, like, if you're just focused on being competitive, you're only going to be as good as other people.
Yeah.
As high as they set the bar. Because once you get to that point, who gives a shit?
Yeah. Where are you going to go?
If you've got nobody else to beat.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then somebody else is going to come up and they're going to knock you off.
Yeah.
And so I think it has to be like, you can bear these things in mind. Like, it's always like, oh, you've had your first or your second attempt or something, and somebody comes up and they outlift you. Okay, fine, let's go and outlift them.
Yeah.
That's okay to do. But if you have like if you're only at a competition just for the joy of beating the crap out of everybody else, then it's just not, you're never going to be as good an athlete, I think, as you could otherwise be. By and large, I think some people really thrive with the competition, but I think those people had to eat a lot of humble pie when they were on the way up.
Yeah.
So because it works both ways. So yeah, I think but yeah, most people I've seen that do really well, like, obviously they are worried about, like, what numbers they're hitting, are they making their attempts, what's this other person doing, but they got there because they enjoy it and because they're good at it and because
they want to be better than themselves last year.
It's a constant process of just self-improvement.
Absolutely.
So, I think, like, if you just focus on that, then beating everybody else is going to handle itself.
Yeah.
You're not even going to have to worry.
Yeah.
So yeah, just put more weight on the bar.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sick.
All right.
Have we got time for one more?
I reckon so.
Go on then, let's squeeze one out quickly. That sounded really weird. I said it, and in my head I was like, oh God, why did I just...
All right, well, another one from Zarko. He wants to know, how did you get into weightlifting?
I'll keep this short because I don't... Basically, I used to do CrossFit. I know. But when I first started, I was more kind of interested in the rowing and the running and like all of the kind of I guess the fitness side rather than the strength side. And then I started doing S&C for American football when I was at university. And then I kind of got slowly introduced to weightlifting, like with bars and with sticks, nothing too kind of drastic. And then once I graduated uni, I kind of joined a CrossFit box and I started doing more weightlifting. After a couple of months, I moved to London. That's kind of when my first initial transition between weightlifting and CrossFit was. And the main reason was just because CrossFit was so expensive that I couldn't afford to go. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I like about it? I really like the strength aspect. So I'm going to go and try and find a weightlifting coach. So that's basically my journey. I think I've been doing this now for about 4.5 years. Since it will be, bloody hell, it's a long time, 2015, middle of 2015-ish. Oh, actually, no, it won't. It will have been 2016 in January or February. I remember because I told myself that Christmas that I was going to join a weightlifting club in the new year. And like everyone does, they write down all their New Year's resolutions. January rolls by and you're like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And then I was like, actually, you know what? In Feb, I just did it, joined up. And then obviously 4.5 years later, yeah, here I am.
There you go, you old sponge.
Me old sponge.
But yeah, no, I got into weightlifting at uni actually. So first year of uni, first semester did not go well. I was very good at IT, but turns out computer science is quite a different beast. So I ended up like taking a year out, just to kind of like sort things out, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, if I wanted to continue my course, if I wanted to jump on a different course, that kind of thing. But during that year out, I got back into swimming, which I really, had really enjoyed for years. Probably like the only sport that I properly got on with, simply because I hate cardio. I hate cardio.
Yeah.
It's great because I always had like loads of power and just absolutely no cardio output. So I was good for like rounders and stuff, as long as, I'm just standing in the field doing nothing or just batting it as far as I can.
Sprinting.
But like, everything else, terrible at. But swimming I kind of enjoyed anyway. So I kind of got back into that. And that was just really good for like, I just really enjoying it. And it gave me a bit of structure and, it was kind of improving like my physical, mental health. And I just kind of wanted to just work with that. And so, it was kind of like, well, I'm doing swimming. Okay, how do I actually like improve my swimming? And, again, like the first suggestion is like, spend a day or two every week in the gym, just like getting strong. Because apparently that helps with swimming. So I thought, okay, I'll give that a crack. And got into the gym. Just doing like general stuff, just more general GPP almost.
Yeah.
Almost like just strength work and, learning what all the different movements are and how to move and that sort of thing. And then, so I returned back to uni, ended up thinking like, because at this point I'd sort of given up swimming. I was just spending time in the gym because I enjoyed it more. So I went back to uni and then they got a weightlifting club there. So I was like, oh, okay, that's Olympic weightlifting. That's pretty cool. Decided trying to teach myself power cleaning, but it didn't go very well. So I thought, well, if they can show me, that will be great. Yeah. So I was there for, I think 2 or 3 months until I bumped into Connor. And then he's just been my coach ever since, really, and we've been at it for 3 years now, coming on 3 years.
It's been almost 3 years.
So and then that was that really. So the gym stuff went out the window, the swimming went out the window, and it's just been like pure weightlifting since then. Just really enjoy it. Yeah. So that was kind of my kind of intro to it, I suppose.
Absolutely. Solid. How long have you been weightlifting now then?
I think like 2.5 years almost.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I'd been lifting for a couple of years before I'd met you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you'd only just, I wouldn't say you only just started, but you I'd say in maybe month 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Your newbie year.
Properly in October.
Yeah.
I think. So what it's June now, isn't it? So October, December, January, March, April, May, June. Yeah, so just over 2.5 years.
Yeah.
3. But we must have. It was London Bridge, wasn't it? So it would have been December.
Yeah, it would have been November, December.
November, December. Yeah, November, December. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then we were trying to get like 1-to-1 sessions sorted out, but they didn't sort it out.
Yeah, I know.
That was great. So we just,
We were just like, well, yeah, yeah. Anyway, all right.
Yeah.
I think that what time are we on? Oh, we've been doing this almost an hour now.
Jeez.
Right. I'm probably gonna head off. I've baked a batch of cookies, so I'm gonna go smash some of those.
That sounds good.
And then we'll get this sent out to the club, and same again next time.
Easy. All right.